What if the history you memorized in school was just the final draft, carefully edited to erase something massive? A forgotten empire, global in scale, buried not by time, but by design. Imagine entire cities covered in mud, maps rewritten, and technologies far ahead of their time. Quietly removed from the timeline. Not lost, erased. This isn't just about missing pages in a textbook. It's about a civilization so advanced, so disruptive, that admitting its existence could collapse everything we think we know. Long before skyscrapers pierced the sky, before nations drew their borders, there may have been something else. An empire without a flag. A power erased not by war, but by narrative. They called it Tartaria. And what you're about to see might change the way you look at the world beneath your feet. For centuries, we were told the map of history was complete. Civilizations rose and fell, from Mesopotamia to Rome, all carefully catalogued, documented, and approved. But what if an entire global empire was erased? Not by time, but by design. In dusty archives and forbidden manuscripts, the name Tartaria keeps resurfacing. A supposed superpower stretching from Russia to America, with technology, architecture, and knowledge far beyond its age. Yet try asking a historian about it, and watch the conversation shift uncomfortably. They'll say it was just a vague region, a cartographic error, a myth misinterpreted by modern conspiracy theorists. But how do you explain the buildings? The impossible towers, star forts, and domes found across continents, all bearing the same mysterious fingerprint. Some claim Tartaria mastered free energy. Others suggest it was wiped out by a global cataclysm, or a silent war fought not with weapons, but with ink, censorship, and fire. Whatever the truth, something doesn't fit in the official timeline. Every great cover-up starts with a silence. A redacted name. A gap in the textbook that no one dares question, and in the case of Tartaria, that silence echoes louder the deeper you dig. Because if Tartaria did exist, it rewrites everything. Our understanding of power, history, and who really shaped the world we live in. It forces us to ask, what else has been buried, and why? In this journey, we'll unravel the suppressed clues, the strange ruins, and the timelines that don't align. Whether truth or grand illusion, one thing is certain. History isn't just written by the victors, it's erased by them too. Long before satellites and GPS, mapmakers documented a world they barely understood. And amid trade routes and sea monsters, one recurring name haunts ancient records, Tartaria. From 16th century European maps to 19th century encyclopedias, this civilization appeared with surprising authority and vast territorial reach. In some documents, Tartaria spanned nearly all of Central Asia and parts of Siberia, even reaching into North America. This challenges not only official geography, but the very concept of global empires before the colonial era. How could such an enormous territory simply vanish from modern textbooks? The most intriguing detail lies in the precision with which these maps depict unknown structures and cities absent from conventional historiography. Towering spires, cryptic symbols, and even canal systems drawn in regions we now deem uninhabitable. Whoever drew these knew something we've forgotten. Critics argue that Tartaria was just a generic label used for northern barbarian tribes. But if that were true, why are there so many detailed variations? Why the care in illustrating coats of arms, trade networks, and named capitals? There are French, Dutch, and British maps with labels like Great Tartary or Independent Tartary, suggesting not a cartographic void, but a political and cultural identity. And curiously, after the 19th century, these mentions vanish abruptly. Is it merely coincidence that, during this same period, national archives caught fire and history textbooks underwent systematic revision? The ashes may have erased the papers, but not the pattern. Because every time Tartaria reappears on an old map, it casts a long shadow over the modern narrative. A shadow that whispers, something colossal was hidden in plain sight. Imagine walking through a modern city and realizing that the ground floor of certain buildings wasn't the original ground floor. Buried windows, doors sealed by earth, columns that sink without explanation. It's as if something buried the entire past. This is what many refer to as the mud flood, a silent catastrophe that erased true history. The mud flood theory claims that between the 18th and 19th centuries, the world suffered a global event, or a series of events, that covered entire cities in meters of mud. But unlike earthquakes or tsunamis, this reset was quietly erased from official records. What survived? Partially submerged architecture and redrawn maps. Cities like San Francisco, Paris, Moscow, and Istanbul show similar signs, entire underground floors with complete architectural details, as if they were once the main entrance. Why would a building have windows below street level? And why do so many cities share this exact pattern? Photographs from the 19th century show workers digging up streets for urban leveling, only to uncover ancient gates, staircases descending into the earth, and undocumented foundation layers. It's as if we're living on top of a buried civilization, without even realizing it. Some say the mud flood was natural, a climatic cataclysm. Others suggest something far more unsettling, a deliberate act. A way to reconfigure the world, bury old capitals, hide lost technologies, and erase all trace of the civilization that built Tartaria. And here's where a sinister pattern emerges. After the alleged event, massive fires broke out in major libraries, like those in Chicago and Boston. Thousands of books and archives were lost. Newspapers of the time mention restructuring, but never explain how or why these buildings were so deeply buried. If all this is just coincidence, it's a global coincidence. But if it's true, we may be looking at an intentional reset, an architectural and cultural cover-up that reorganized history under a new narrative, one in which Tartaria never existed. When studying buildings attributed to Tartaria, one question quickly arises. Why do so many of them feature metallic towers, copper domes, and structures that resemble antennas? They don't appear merely ornamental, they look functional. To some researchers, this is evidence of an ancient energy network that tapped into the very ether of the air. Before modern electricity became standardized, there was a theory known as the ether, an invisible substance that permeated everything and could conduct energy. Scientists like Nikola Tesla believed in it, and intriguingly, many so-called Tartarian structures seem deliberately designed to capture this unseen force. Metallic domes, geometric spires, and finials topped with spheres appear on buildings across multiple continents, all dating from the same period. Some are aligned with supposed energy lines, as if part of a global wireless transmission network. But after the early 20th century, these structures were deactivated, or destroyed. The 1893 World's Fair in Chicago is a striking example. Monumental buildings with massive domes and glowing fountains operated without any visible wiring. Primary sources claimed the fair was powered by a non-conventional system, and soon after, every one of those buildings was demolished. Why? It's as if these world fairs were used both to reveal and erase the remnants of a previous civilization. A final breath before the Great Erasure. And the patents? The documentation? Many vanished, along with the lives of some inventors who dared to replicate the experiments. Conspiracy theorists suggest this energy was clean, limitless, and free, which made it a direct threat to emerging economic models based on oil, coal, and metered electricity. If Tartaria had mastered this knowledge, its downfall becomes not just historical, but strategic. Because hiding a civilization is one thing. Hiding the source of its power is something else entirely. Perhaps Tartaria's true heresy wasn't simply its existence, but what it knew about the universe around us. When the history we know is full of gaps, we must look not only at what is shown, but at what was destroyed. And between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a dark pattern repeats itself. Unexplained fires, megalomaniac world fairs, and mass demolitions. Coincidence? Or rewriting? Asterisk asterisk. The World Expositions were grand events held in cities like Chicago, Paris, St. Louis, and San Francisco. Gigantic palaces, colossal domes, and monumental avenues were erected in record time. But the strangest part? Just a few years later, nearly all of it was demolished. The official explanation? They were temporary structures. But what if they were Tartarian relics? Asterisk asterisk. Photos from that era show buildings with refined finishes, durable materials, and architecture far too sophisticated to be considered temporary. The Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, for instance, still stands, and doesn't look like it was ever made of plaster and wood, as claimed. So what else was kept quiet? Asterisk asterisk. At the same time, devastating fires swept through libraries and historic centers in New York, Chicago, Boston, Moscow, and London. Coincidentally, many of these places were about to catalog documents that would now be crucial to understanding forgotten civilizations. Fire, as always, is history's most efficient editor. Asterisk asterisk. Newspapers of the time describe strange electrical malfunctions, invisible wires, and hooded figures seen just before the flames. Stories that sound like fiction, until they start appearing in multiple cities, with the same modus operandi. And soon after, new versions of history were published, now with no mention of Tartaria. Asterisk asterisk. The more radical theorists believe there was a global operation to replace the past. A true civilizational software update. Maps were redrawn, documents censored, buildings demolished, and collective memory reprogrammed. Asterisk asterisk. If this hypothesis is real, then we're living in a post-erasure world, where history has been formatted like a hard drive, and what came before remains buried beneath layers of fire, mud, and carefully narrated lies. Even after centuries of erasure, Tartaria still whispers in places few dare to look. It's as if it left echoes, marks in stone, repeated symbols, misunderstood technologies. The signs are everywhere. You just have to stop seeing with the eyes of schooling, and start seeing with the eyes of doubt. Asterisk asterisk. Take the star forts. Perfectly geometric military structures shaped like stars, found on every continent. No one knows for sure who built them or why. Some are in deserts, others submerged, others atop inaccessible mountains. The theory? They were energy devices, or territorial control stations of the ancient Tartarian Empire. Asterisk asterisk. And what about the monumental orphanages, lunatic asylums, and colossal train terminals built in areas where supposedly almost no one lived? Buildings capable of hosting thousands in towns that didn't even have a tenth of that population. Who built them? And for whom? Asterisk asterisk. Some independent researchers have begun combing through 19th century patent archives, uncovering diagrams of machines resembling Tesla towers, airships, and unfamiliar acoustic devices. Could these inventors have been reviving something old, rather than creating from scratch? Asterisk asterisk. To this day, Tatar-Mongol symbols appear in flags, stained glass, sculptures, and building facades. Sun wheels, double dragons, conical towers. Elements that survive as mere decorations, but may once have been part of a larger code. A code that once unified a global civilization. Asterisk asterisk. There are also reports from 18th and 19th century explorers who claim to find ghost towns, abandoned railways, and empty palaces deep in Central Asia. Their accounts were dismissed as exaggerations, but they gain new relevance as anonymous ruins continue to be discovered via satellite. Asterisk asterisk. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is this: Tartaria's remnants never disappeared. They simply stopped being recognized. Because, at its core, the greatest trick of a historical lie is making the truth look like madness. Asterisk asterisk. If Tartaria was real, we're not just facing an erased civilization, we're facing a collective trauma. The trauma of having been deceived about who we truly were. Because a global empire, with free energy, sacred architecture, and unified knowledge, changes everything we think we know about the past. Asterisk asterisk. This theory is not accepted by academia. It's mocked, attacked, labeled as delusion. But what else would you expect from a dangerous truth? If it's really just a myth, why do so many records vanish? Why do so many questions lead to silence or termination? Asterisk asterisk. Tartaria forces us to look at history itself with suspicion. It doesn't appear as a date, but as a void between dates. An empty space between centuries. And every void hides something. Maybe we're not the first civilizations. Maybe we're just the survivors of a successful reset. Asterisk asterisk. And if everything was buried, it wasn't just out of shame, it was strategy. A people who lived in harmony with the Earth's natural energy, without global wars, with art and science integrated, would be a direct threat to the modern narrative of scarcity and control. Asterisk asterisk. After all, he who controls the past controls the present. And maybe that's exactly why Tartaria must remain taboo. Because to admit its existence is to question the authority of everything we've been taught: governments, religions, science, borders. Asterisk asterisk. But the traces are still there. In every forgotten dome. In every suppressed map. In every undocumented ruin. And in every mind bold enough to ask, what if it's true? Because every forgotten empire needs only one thing to rise again: someone who refuses to forget. Asterisk asterisk. And maybe that someone is you, because now that you've seen behind the curtain, history will never be the same. What you do with this information, that is the true revolution. Asterisk asterisk.